A national day of mourning and a state funeral for President Jimmy Carter. Thousands of dignitaries were in attendance at the Washington National Cathedral for a farewell to the 39th U.S. president who passed away at the age of 100. Okay, let's talk more about President Jimmy Carter's foreign policy legacy, especially the relationship between the United States and China and how Carter helped craft that. And for that, we're joined by Joseph Williams. Joe's a former senior editor at U.S. News and World Report and currently a journalist. Joe, good to see you again, my friend. It's nice to look back on Carter. He's someone, once he left office, really became probably the best ex-president that this country's ever had. How would you describe Carter's approach to foreign policy in general? He had a reputation of micromanaging and trying to work in D.C. with the approach of an outsider.
Well, and I think that's accurate. I think President Carter's legacy overseas is very strong, but it's also very mixed. He did bring normalization of relations between U.S. and China, building on what Nixon did in the 70s, and sparked a competition between the two countries, kind of a frenemy relationship that still endures today. I would say that it started when Carter first approached Beijing about normalizing relations, and I think that's where it all began. Now, his foreign policy was supremely tarnished by the Iran situation, the revolution in which the Shah of Iran ended up landing in the U.S. To spark the ire of a lot of the students in Tehran who felt like he should have been exiled. That was a critical decision by Carter. But any historian you talk to will tell you that it was very much in his values. He saw the Shah as a U.S. ally, and he was not going to abandon that U.S. ally, no matter what kind of pressure came to bear.
Yeah, and of course the Shah developing cancer and receiving treatment here in the U.S. In his final days. But moving on, one of Carter's hallmark achievements in foreign policy really was the further normalization of ties with China. What do you believe the key factors led to that decision? What were they?
Well, I think he recognized, Carter was always widely regarded as a man ahead of his time. Certainly his presidency, with the benefit of looking at historically, kind of bears that out. But I think he was kind of a pragmatic decision. He saw China as an emerging power. He saw the U.S. Having an opportunity to cooperate with this emerging power and to not have make an ally out of someone who probably could do the U.S. a lot of good. And in turn, Beijing would get access to U.S. markets. It would get a very powerful Western ally on its side, or at least a Western partner as far as trading is concerned. And I think that's what he saw. Carter was very good at about seeing around the curves in his presidency, and I think that was one more aspect of it where he was ahead of his time.
And, and Carter, what a rich, full life he did have. And people forget he went to the U.S. Naval Academy. He majored in nuclear physics there. Brilliant man. So how do you believe the Carter administration's approach to the issue of trade with China really helped forge things? And what degree is that a part of his legacy?
Well, I think it's a very important but overlooked part of his legacy. He approached China as a trading partner. He saw an opportunity, tried to seize it. People were kind of skeptical at the time. I remember a lot of reports saying, what is he doing? We don't really know. But I think he was very much a pragmatist on top of all of his idealism. As you mentioned, he was a very brilliant man. And I think that's one of the things that allowed him to see into the future, if you will, that this could be a partnership that could benefit both countries. And I think to a large degree, hostility is current tensions aside, it has. China is one of the U.S.'s largest trading partners. The U.S. Consumes a lot of goods that are manufactured in China. And without that consumer economy, I think the U.S. economy would be in a whole lot of trouble. And I think Beijing is a key to that. Now, we have to iron out those differences, but I'm pretty sure Carter would have been one to suggest that the differences are a lot smaller than the commonalities.
Yeah, that's one thing I think you can say about Carter. And I had the chance once to go to Mexico and watch him as he was one of the monitors of the presidential race down there. And just his knowledge of everything, no matter on what continent, was amazing. So taking that into consideration, what do you think the lessons that continue to influence trading relationship today that were really fostered under Carter 45 years ago?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I think one of the enduring legacies that he has or will have, when history looks back on him, will be kinder than it was when in his present day, and certainly that it is now. I think he understood the fact that we were all connected globally. We may be a country over on one side of the ocean, but what matters is what happens on the other side of the planet. It can have a very real impact on the United States, and if everyone does well, the whole planet will rise together. I mean, taking note of his work on guinea worm in Africa. I mean, that was something that he felt very strongly about, just on humanitarian grounds, but also on a pragmatic level. You can establish some partnerships. You can have a productive trade relationship. And I think that's one of the things he would say today is isolationism is a mistake. We are all bound together. We can't do one thing without somebody else being affected. And I think that's what he would say if he were alive today. He'd warn against globalism and encourage partnerships, no matter where they happen to occur.
You know, I think that's dead on. And also the fact that Carter and his wife, the former First Lady, very active on the continent of Africa. You talked about the guinea worm. For people who don't know that, it's very painful. It's a worm that works its way out of the body, and it can be treated very easily. And Carter really helped foster that to a large degree. And I think that kind of is a microcosm of the way Carter was. Do you think his accomplishments, especially looking at China, are they fully appreciated right now?
Honestly, I don't think they are. But again, I think with a little bit more time, even today, you have people kind of revising how they thought about Carter's legacy once he was in office. He was the first person to talk about the energy in the environment. He created the Department of Education, the Department of Energy. These are all departments that, while incoming President Donald Trump may look at them very skeptically, they're quite integral to the functioning of the United States. So I think history will be kinder to him than the present day and even his current day will be, and I think that will be long remembered. I think he also was a global citizen who was someone who saw the inherent nature in everyone and lived by his faith as well as his principles.
Yeah, it was wonderful listening to his grandson, recognizing the fact that he is not an everyday citizen, even though that's the way he wants to be remembered. Joe, thanks so much. Certainly appreciate your insight.
My pleasure, Sean.